Hi, Paige here, the One Foot Gamer. Thought today we're going to talk about making that new campaign from scratch. Particularly, I'm going to focus on making that brand new exploration / hex crawl type of campaign. The one they often refer to as the West Marches campaign. Now, in this sort of campaign, you generally start at the very edge of human civilization. You know, the kingdom's way over here, here's the capital city over here, and you are way over here at the edge of the map. You know, often at that last town or maybe that keep on the borderlands. And past that last outpost of civilization lies unexplored lands, monster-held lands, or maybe lands held by humans of much lower levels of technology. Now, this could be a great area of adventure, an area where a character could seek their fortune or even carve out their own nation. It could be a great place to hide some weirdness and uniqueness as well. Now, part of the fun of these campaigns is going to be the unknown. So you don't want to be setting that campaign in any published campaign worlds that your PCs know all about. Every inch of the Forgotten Realms has been covered over and over again, even if they've moved the timeline up hundreds of years, and your PCs are going to know all about it. At least some of them will. So you want a new world. And I'm currently working on my own campaign in this style. Finally replacing my long-running campaign world with something a little more fresh and a lot more dark. My campaign world was always a bit deadly, was always a bit comedic as well. There's a definite heavy comedy and whimsy that ran through it, but this time I think I'm going to go a little bit different. Now, I'm going to be using basic fantasy for this campaign because it's the cheapest retro clone out there. My players were able to buy the book easily. It's like $5 and something on Amazon. It's basically a clone of basic / expert D&D with a few small changes. It does away with alignment, and it doesn't do race as class. So you can be a dwarf, dwarven fighter, or a dwarven thief, that sort of thing. Now, there's no reason to try to create the entire world at once, particularly if you're going to set your campaign in a largely unexplored area of the world. Part of the fun of both running the campaign and the players playing the campaign is the exploration and finding out the new stuff in the first place. So we really just at the start need to lay down some basics here. Now, to begin, we don't need to set up a bunch of countries or kingdoms here. We really just need one. The one that we're at the edge of. Now, in the past, in my campaign world, I frequently used the Kin Kingdom as the big generic fantasy kingdom in the world. And I'm going to use that name again. Not that I'm actually reusing much of anything. The central portion of the Kin Kingdom has always been safe and civilized, and the gameplay action just never went there. I think a few times they visited the capital city to do something very specific and then left immediately. All the action always happened in the border territories or more dangerous countries, so I'm going to do that again. Now, we should probably come up with a few different cultural or ethnic groups for the players to belong to, so they're not all the same. We'll go ahead and have the kin. They're the ruling class or ethnicity. They are an ethnicity and a class both, from the center of the Kin Kingdom. And they have a little bit of an unnatural look, they'll say. They've had a lot of different non-human ancestors in the past. So, got a little bit of a unnaturally white skin. Kind of have, maybe they've got small fangs, ears are pointed a little bit. They look just a little bit monstrous. Not where they're not attractive looking or anything like that, but you can obviously tell if somebody's a kin. Now, we need a mainstream one. We'll call them the border group. That's the people of the Kin Kingdom and border territories who are not part of the ruling class. Basically, the rest of the continent. And so people can make whatever they want here. I'm going to say that this is a very wide ethnic group that can have both skin and hair from light to dark. But you can still tell people belong to that group because of their facial features. But we need to have some more primitive humans as well here. And we'll go ahead and have the barbarian group who are I would say they will be a separate ethnic group than the Kin Kingdom group. Haven't decided what they look like yet. Maybe it doesn't matter. Or maybe they're not a separate ethnic group. Maybe it's completely cultural and they look exactly the same. Either one would be fine. These guys would be native to the unexplored lands, but they've been stuck at the very end of the Stone Age for thousands of years as far as technology goes, and they've always traded for anything more advanced. Now, we need to have an off-the-wall one too, right? When I was thinking about it, started thinking about my Redbox Fantasy RPG, which I'm currently not playing, but the monster book has an entry for Minotaur slave masters, and they keep various human and humanoid slaves, and they're overall kind of benevolent masters. Each family oversees a group of 20 to 200 slaves, along with usually a vast herd of cattle. And the slave masters are primarily driven by social competition with other slave masters, the other slave master families, as to who has the best group, the best town, or the best camp. And that trickles down to every single detail, including the health, well-being, education of the slaves, how nice they're dressed, all of it. So it's, honestly, in a world like this, being born into the slave master culture really isn't that bad. And I've always said that in most groups, they let the people leave freely if they want to. Most of them just come back anyway. Because once they find out the real world is a lot more dangerous and not nearly as nice, they come on back. So the characters could pick that sort of background if they really wanted to be a fish out of water with little or no experience in the outside world. Now for your elves, dwarves, and halflings, we're just going to run those as usually presented. I'm going to say that there isn't an actual demi-human settlement of any significant size anywhere in the area where the campaign is going to be focused. This isn't to say the players can't play them, and they probably won't play a lot, and they'll probably play lots of them, but the focus isn't going to be on dwarven clans or elven clans or any of that. They live far away. Any that are here have traveled here. And I always like to add in something about food. So in my previous campaign, it was definitely about pancakes for some reason. The pancake was a very common food. There were huge variations on them. Basically, pancake was more than just a pancake in that campaign. It was anything, any batter circle that people put all sorts of other things into. And that was my last campaign. This time I'm going to say there are vast flocks of large turkeys that roam these lands, and they're going to be the most common meat source. All right, now we need a religion. There are a lot of ways to go with this. I've made up my own pantheons. I've used the stock Greyhawk ones. They're presented pretty well in 3rd edition D&D, or in the Greyhawk specific things in 1st and 2nd. I've let the players make their own pantheon up by whatever they add to their background. This time, though, I want to do something totally different. I wanted this game to be darker, so I'm just going to use the Chaos Gods from Warhammer. And I think this will go well with the fact that I'm not using alignments. And for those of you who aren't aware, that Warhammer has the 4 Chaos Gods. Those are the 4 major gods of the settings, along with the Emperor. The first one is Khorne. He's the blood god. He's the god of war, hate, rage, murder, and bloodshed. So he's your war god. Nurgle, the plague lord, is the god of disease, death, despair, decay, and rebirth. Notice there's always usually something positive there. Slanesh, he's the god of pleasure, pain, excess, self-indulgent, and perfection. Tzench, changer of ways. He's the god of change, sorcery, ambition, hope, and perfection. And finally, there's the monarch. He is the replacement for the emperor in the Warhammer setting. He's represented by whoever the current king of the Kin Kingdom is. The king represents the monarch, but the king is not the monarch. The monarch is a god that's comprised of everyone who has ever sat upon that throne and whoever will sit on that throne. Now, since we're doing this, both the forces of good and evil are going to worship the same basic pantheon. There might be minor demigods here and there, but the 4 Chaos Gods and the monarch, they're the big deals. And any other gods are going to be small in power and likely limited to a region or species. So a good part of this is that, the cleric might indeed find an altar to his own god deep in the dungeon. So, but wait, let's come up with some more flavors and weirdness while we're at it. This is just going with things I have personally. I have a lot of Skaven miniatures from Warhammer, and I don't think I have more than 3 kobold miniatures. So Skaven, who are rat men, roughly kobold size, they're just going to replace kobolds in this world completely. And since Skaven aren't a normal D&D monster, I'm just going to let them have the exact same stats as kobolds for ease of replacement. And since I have a ton of Skaven miniatures, they're going to be most common. I'm not going to use a lot of goblins because I don't have that many goblins, but boy do I have a lot of Skaven. And I've got a decent sized group of beautifully painted cowgirl miniatures. I got them from a bulk buy years ago. I was never able to figure out what game they're supposed to go to. So I want some chance in my life to use those things. Maybe they came through the rift from a Western world, which definitely fits into the 1970s feel of what I'm trying to do, because they encouraged you to port over things from Boot Hill, D&D to Boot Hill and all that. Maybe we'll say all the men in the group were too brash with their advanced firearms trying to take the place over. They quickly got themselves killed off, and the surviving women are much more cautious. And of course, I'll have to come up with a reason why the firearms won't work for the PCs. Maybe they're tied to their home plane. Man, they won't fire for anybody who's native to this plane. Or maybe they'll fade from existence if separated too far from their owner. Maybe there's almost no ammunition left in the first place, so any that fell into PC hands would become useless. Or I could just go with simply displaying one of those things would mean a death sentence from all the remaining cowgirls, because they're the only ones you could have got it from in the first place. That last one might be all it would actually take. That, combined with the knowledge that nobody but the cowgirls knows how to make ammunition anyway. Not that I would make the firearms some overwhelming thing that was better than anything else in the setting. They would not be particularly all that much better. I'm going to say that the large unexplored area was once home to a technological society. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to have functioning technological relics. Characters aren't going to find a car and drive it around, or get an old radio set working or anything like that. But what it means is there are going to be a decent number of buildings and complexes and compounds that are based on modern buildings. And a lot less of traditional random dungeons with, corridors that don't make any sense and death traps and things like this. And that's going to mean things like the remains of water towers, and the steel frames to billboards, and the remains to paved roads will be all over the landscape in the unexplored lands. Alright, I think I've got enough ideas here to get me started on this. I'm going to base that first dungeon on a shopping mall map. Hey, thanks for making it to the end here. Why don't you give me some more ideas I can use down in the comments? And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, why don't you do it? And hey, can you tell the people in your game group about this channel? Because I really don't think most of them know about it. I mean, I know Dave knows about it because I saw him in the comments, but I haven't seen anybody else in your group in the comments at all. Hey, thanks, and I hope to see you again soon.